She was on her knees on Fifth Avenue. Rain coming down so hard it was washing the blood off her lip before anyone could see it. One heel snapped clean off her shoe, her hands flat on the wet pavement, and not one person stopped. Not one. The man in the cashmere coat stepped around her like she was a pothole. The woman in the red dress looked directly into her face and kept moving. The doorman of the Meridian Hotel, standing 20 feet away under a dry canopy, watched her for 3 full seconds and then looked at his phone. Nobody stopped. Nobody bent down. Nobody said a word. In the most expensive zip code in New York City, a woman was bleeding on the sidewalk, and the city moved around her like water around a stone. And then he stopped. She did not know his name. She did not know what he was. She did not know that the 2 men who had grabbed her 30 seconds ago had run, actually run, the moment they saw him step off that curb. All she knew was that a man in a suit that cost more than her rent crouched down on the wet pavement of Fifth Avenue and looked at her like she was a person worth looking at. And something in that moment changed everything, because the most dangerous man in Manhattan had just made the most dangerous decision of his life. He chose her. You need to understand who she was before you can understand what that moment meant. Because Raya Callene was not a woman who people tended to notice. That was not an accident. That was a skill she had spent 3 years learning. She was 28 years old. She worked the overnight shift in the trauma ICU at Mercy General Hospital in Manhattan. She was extraordinary at her job in the specific way that happens when someone has lived through enough personal chaos that keeping calm becomes their first language. She could hold a dying patient's hand and speak in a voice so steady, so warm, so entirely without panic, that the patient believed everything was going to be fine, even when it wasn't. She had learned that voice somewhere she did not talk about. She kept her hair back. She kept her scrubs pressed. She smiled at patients and colleagues alike with a warmth that was completely genuine and completely controlled at the same time. Her supervisor had written the word exceptional in her last review. Raya had folded that paper and put it in her coat pocket and felt nothing, because she had learned a long time ago that being exceptional doesn't protect you from the things that actually hurt you. She lived in a studio apartment on the 12th floor of a building in Midtown, one window facing a brick wall. A thrift store coffee maker she had bought for $8 and named Gerald, because naming a coffee maker was a way of reminding herself every morning that she was allowed to have small things that were only hers. Everything in that apartment was hers. That was the whole point. Every plate, every book, every throw pillow she had found at a weekend market on an October Sunday when the light was good and she had let herself feel something almost like happiness. All of it hers, chosen by her, paid for by her, belonging to nobody else. 6 months ago, that had felt like the closest thing to a miracle she had ever experienced. The miracle was called leaving Marcus Druitt. Marcus was a real estate attorney. He was handsome in the specific, intentional way of certain men, a handsomeness designed to make you feel chosen by it, like winning something you didn't realize you'd entered. He wore a Rolex and smiled at the right people and said all the correct things at dinner parties. And behind closed doors, behind the smile and the suit and the watch, he was the kind of man who made a woman spend 3 years learning how to disappear. Not with his fists. Marcus was far too careful for fists. He used quieter instruments, words calibrated to make her doubt what she had seen, silences engineered to feel like punishment, a smile that could turn into something cold so quickly that by the time she registered the change, she was already apologizing. and a voice that told her, in ways she could never quite prove to anyone else, that she was nothing without him. That she was lucky he stayed. That no one else would ever look at her the way he did. She had left him 6 months ago. She had packed one bag while he was at a conference in Chicago, had taken Gerald the coffee maker, and had moved into the studio on the 12th floor where no one knew her name. She had slept with the chain on the door for 3 months straight. Then she had stopped. She should not have stopped, because there was something under her bed. A shoebox. Inside it, a USB drive, printed bank statements, screenshots of wire transfers, an email chain she had found entirely by accident on a shared laptop she had been cleaning out the week before she left. She had not been looking for anything. She had found everything. What was on that drive described a financial fraud so deliberate, so deeply woven into the structure of New York City real estate, that she had been nauseated for 4 days after reading it. Money moving through shell companies, a federal judge, city council members. 4 years of it, careful and invisible and enormous. She had copied everything to the drive. She had left. And every single day for 6 months, she had meant to take that box to the DA's office on Center Street and hand it over. She had meant to. She kept not going. Fear does that to you. It makes you extraordinarily good at meaning to do things. On the Tuesday morning that would change her life, she was getting dressed for her shift when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Unknown number. She didn't answer. It buzzed again. And again. 4 times. Persistent in the way of something that does not understand the concept of being ignored. She turned it face down. She finished her coffee. She put on her coat. She was halfway to the subway before she allowed herself to think about those calls. And then she decided she was being paranoid. She was not being paranoid. The shift at Mercy General started the way shifts always started. Fast and loud and relentless. Raya arrived 3 minutes early because she was always 3 minutes early, and that small discipline was one of the things that made her feel like she still had a grip on the shape of her own life. Her coworker Jade Whitmore was at the nurse's station with 2 coffees and a look that said she had already been there for an hour. Jade was the kind of friend who showed up without being asked, loud where Raya was quiet, expressive where Raya was contained. She had a gift for manufacturing almost smiles in people who had forgotten how. Raya trusted her completely. Remember that. Because that detail matters more than you think right now. The morning moved the way I see you mornings move, and Raya was doing what she always did, which was keeping herself composed and useful, when she looked up from a patient chart at 11:14 and saw him standing in the lobby. Marcus Druitt, gray suit, holding flowers. Her body knew before her brain did. It went perfectly, instantly still. The practiced stillness. The 3-year-old stillness of a woman who had learned that any visible reaction, fear, anger, tears, anything he could read on her face, was something he could use. He smiled when he saw her. He always smiled. The smile was a tool, the same as everything else about him. He talked his way past the receptionist and crossed the lobby toward her and said, in the quiet, reasonable voice he always used when there were people nearby who could hear him, that he was just worried about her, that he just wanted to make sure she was okay, that he just needed a minute. And then his voice dropped half a degree and he said, "You have something of mine, Raya. We both know it. Give it back, and this is over." She kept her face completely neutral. She said she didn't know what he was talking about. He looked at her for a moment. He said, "Okay." He left the flowers on the reception desk and walked out. She stood at the nurse's station for 30 seconds without moving. Then she went back to the chart. Her hands were steady. She had trained them to be. The rest of the shift passed like weather building. She did her job. She was good at it. She held people together because that is what she did. But underneath the calm, she could feel the pressure of what was coming. The way you can feel a storm in the air hours before it arrives. She did not tell Jade about Marcus. She told herself she didn't want to worry her. That was a mistake she would understand later. At 10:47, she signed out and walked into a city that had gone cold and wet while she was inside saving other people. She took the longer route home, past the bookshop on 54th Street that she liked to look at even when it was closed. It was one of her small things. The list of small things she was allowed to have. She was half a block from the Meridian Hotel when a car door opened. The man who stepped out was not Marcus. He was larger than Marcus, younger, and he said her full name in the flat way of someone reading a name off a list. She had 1 second of very clear thinking. She turned and she ran. He was faster. There was a second man she hadn't seen. Her arm was grabbed, and she twisted free the way the self-defense class she had taken after leaving Marcus had taught her. A real twist, sharp and committed, and she got loose. She ran 3 steps, and then her body stopped. 22 hours without a real meal. 6 months of running on pure will. Her knees buckled, and the pavement of Fifth Avenue came up and caught her, and there she was, bleeding on the most expensive street in America while the city moved around her, as if she were not there, as if she had never been there. The 2 men were backing away, fast, with the look of people who have just understood something about the immediate environment that they very much wish they had understood 30 seconds ago. She didn't know why. She was about to find out. A pair of shoes stopped beside her head. Italian leather. Still. She turned her face and looked up. The man standing there was not looking at her. He was watching the 2 men who had been retreating. He watched them the way you watch something you have already decided the outcome of. And they ran. Not walked. Ran. Then he looked down at her. His eyes were gray and not warm in the conventional sense, but not cold either. They were the eyes of a man who had seen a great deal of real pain and had formed, over many years, a very specific set of opinions about it. He crouched down on the wet pavement beside her, in a suit that cost more than 3 months of her rent, and he said, without ceremony, without drama, in the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed, "Don't move." She had spent 3 years obeying men with authority in their voices. This was the first time in 3 years that obeying felt like a choice. He made 1 phone call, 4 words. "I need Selah. Now." Then he stayed beside her. Not touching, not pressing, not demanding. Simply present. There. A wall between her and whatever had just happened. She would learn his name was Declan Voss. She would learn what that name meant in this city. But right now, on the pavement, in the rain, all she knew was that he was the only person on all of Fifth Avenue who had stopped. His physician arrived in 4 minutes. Small woman. Efficient. No wasted motion. She examined Raya on the sidewalk, checked her pupils, her pulse, the bruise on her forearm that was 3 days old and shaped like fingers. She said nothing about the bruise yet, but she noted it. They took Raya upstairs to the Meridian, top floor, the most expensive room she had ever been in. Heated floors, a cashmere throw that someone had placed over her with care while she was unconscious, and then stepped back from, because whoever had placed it understood that she needed warmth without intrusion. She woke to the Manhattan skyline through glass walls and a man standing at the window with his back to her, looking at a city that answered to him in ways she was not yet aware of. He let her find her bearings. He did not rush her. This was its own kind of language, one she was beginning to learn to read. "There is water on the nightstand," he said, "and Dr. Park says you have a mild concussion and have not eaten in approximately 16 hours. She has left instructions." Raya pushed herself up. The room swam and settled. She looked at him. "Who is Dr. Park?" she said. "My physician." "Where am I?" "The Meridian, my building. You own a building on 5th Avenue. He turned from the window. "Several, actually. But this one, yes." She took his measure the way she took the measure of patience. Fast, thorough, looking for what the surface was not saying. He was in his early 40s. He had been handsome at 30 and had grown into something more substantial. The way certain men do when they stop caring about being handsome and start being something more permanent. The stillness in him was not peace. It was control. The deliberate, practiced kind that you build when you have learned that stillness is power. "Why did you help me?" she said. "I saw what happened. A lot of people saw." He was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. 2 words, and something underneath them that told her he was going to carry the people who hadn't stopped for a very long time. Then the physician came back. She stood in the doorway with her tablet and said, in the flat professional voice of someone for whom honesty is a medical obligation, "The bruise on your right forearm is 3 days old. It is not consistent with a fall." The room went very quiet. Raya said nothing. Declan, across the room, said nothing either. But she saw his jaw tighten. A single degree, the smallest possible shift, and she understood in that moment that he had cataloged it, that it was going into a file somewhere specific and private. The physician left. He waited until the door closed. "The bruise," he said. "Old." She said 3 days. I said old. He did not push. He moved to the kitchen and came back with a plate of crackers and cheese and sliced apple, things that required no preparation, arranged with the quiet care of someone who had thought briefly but specifically about what a person who hadn't eaten in 16 hours could actually manage. He set the plate on the bed beside her without a word and went back to the window. She ate. There were 2 of them, she said, when she had finished half the plate. "The men outside? They knew my name." "I know. That means someone sent them." "I know." She paused. "His name is Marcus Druitt. He's a real estate attorney. He came to my work today. He wants something I have, something that could seriously hurt him." Declan turned from the window. He said the name back. Flat, just holding it in the air for a moment. "What is it that you have?" he said. She looked at the plate, the crackers, the room that cost more than she earned in a month. "Evidence," she said, "of something he built, something serious enough that he sent 2 men to a sidewalk to retrieve it." Declan crossed the room and sat in the chair across from her. Not on the bed, not close. The distance of someone who understood the difference between presence and pressure. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" he said. "My apartment." "Not anymore. They know your name. Your address is not difficult to find." It was not a threat. It was a fact delivered with the precision of someone who dealt in facts. "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow I will have someone look at Druitt. Not you. I don't want you anywhere near whatever I find." He stood, moved to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. "Raya," he said. She looked up. "The men who grabbed you tonight," he said. "They won't be doing that again." He left before she could ask what that meant. She sat in the beautiful room with the plate of crackers and the cashmere throw and the skyline of the city outside, and she thought about the box under her bed. Then she lay down, and for the first time in 6 months, she slept through the night without the chain on the door. One floor above her, Declan Voss was on a phone call with a man named Colt, speaking in the low, even voice of someone who had been solving problems like this one for 20 years. "Find everything there is on Marcus Druitt," he said. "Real estate law, midtown practice, everything. And get someone on her building by morning." A pause. "Yes," he said. "Her." He ended the call. He stood at his own window, 1 floor higher than hers, looking at the same city from a slightly different angle. He had not done something like this in 12 years. He did not ask himself why he was doing it now. Not yet. But the answer was already forming in the part of him he kept very quiet. She went back to work. Of course she did. She was Raya Callene. She had 12 patients in the ICU who needed nurses who showed up, and a concussion and a sleepless 6 months and the most complicated night of her adult life were not reasons she was willing to give herself for not showing up. A man Declan had posted near the hospital entrance. A quiet, unhurried man named Colt, who did not introduce himself, watched her walk through the doors and sent a single message confirming her arrival. She did not know he was there. She went about her shift. She was good at it. She held her colleagues together and her patients together and herself together in the seamless, invisible way she had developed over 3 years of practice. The morning was ordinary in the way ICU mornings are ordinary, which is to say it was extraordinary and relentless, and she moved through it like water. It was at 2:17 in the afternoon that Marcus returned. This time he had not brought flowers. He came through the front doors in his court suit, the navy pinstripe one, the Rolex catching the fluorescent light of the lobby in the familiar way, with the expression of a man who had spent the previous evening recalculating and had arrived at a new approach. The new approach was simpler. It was, make her afraid in front of people, in a context where she cannot react, in a space where her professionalism traps her. He was very good at that. He crossed the lobby, found her at the nurse's station, and said in the quiet, reasonable voice, "We need to talk right now." She said she was working. He said he didn't care. And then he grabbed her arm, the bruised arm, the 3-day bruise. His fingers pressed directly into it, precisely, and the pain went straight to her shoulder. And she did not make a sound because she had learned not to make sounds. But her face went white and the nurse behind the desk looked up and the security guard at the entrance started moving toward them. Marcus was speaking low and close, the version of his voice that was only for her, the version nobody else could quite hear. "You mail that box," he said, "and I will take apart everything you have rebuilt. Everything. Your job, your license, your name in this city. I will make sure that every person who matters knows exactly who you are and what you have done, and I will make you sorry you ever thought you could do this to me." He did not finish the sentence. The lobby doors opened. Let me describe what it felt like. You know how a storm feels before it breaks. Not the thunder, not the rain. The moment just before, when the air pressure changes and every living thing goes still because something in the atmosphere has shifted and the animal part of your brain is already receiving the signal. That is what it felt like when Declan Voss walked into the lobby of Mercy General Hospital. He was in a dark coat. He had no expression at all, and the security guard who had been moving toward Marcus with the purpose of someone doing his job simply stopped moving. He did not mean to stop. His body stopped before his brain did. Everyone in that lobby went still in the same way, all at once, without coordination, the way birds turn. Declan crossed the room at a pace that was neither fast nor slow, the pace of a man who has never needed to hurry because the world has learned to arrange itself around his timeline. He stopped 3 feet from Marcus. He looked at Marcus's hand on her arm. He looked at Raya's face. He looked at Marcus. "Remove your hand from her arm." His voice was not loud. It was quieter than the lobby ambient sound. It was the voice of a man who had not needed volume in a very long time, because something in the frequency of the way he spoke made volume irrelevant. Marcus was a lawyer. He was trained to manage courtrooms. He was not trained for this. "Who are you?" Marcus said. Declan said nothing. He said again, "Remove your hand from her arm." Same words, same exact tone. The patience of a man who is willing to say something one more time and is done after that. Marcus let go of her arm. He tried to recover. He said, "This is a private matter between me and Raya Callene, and you have no standing here, and I would like to know who you think you are." And Declan Voss said something that every single person in that lobby would remember for years. He said, "That's correct. You don't know who I am. You should find that out before you decide whether to finish that sentence." The lobby was absolutely silent. You could hear the elevator somewhere above them. You could hear someone's phone on vibrate in a waiting room down the hall. Marcus straightened his jacket. He used his courtroom smile, the one he deployed when he was losing and needed to appear as if he was choosing to concede. He looked at Raya. He said, "We'll continue this another time." He walked out. The doors closed behind him. The lobby exhaled. Declan reached into his coat and produced a card. White. A single phone number. No name. He held it out to her. "If he comes back," he said. She took it. She looked at him. "How did you know I was here?" she said. He held the door. "I know," she said. He walked out. She stood at the nurse's station holding the card. Jade materialized at her elbow carrying an expression full of questions. "Who was that?" Jade said. Raya looked at the door where he had gone. "I am not entirely sure yet," she said. But she was beginning to understand. She went home that night and took the shoebox out from under the bed. She sat on the edge of the mattress with it in her lap. She thought about what he had said in the penthouse. Use it. Don't be afraid of it. She did not put the box back under the bed. She put it in the inside pocket of her coat. Instinct. Something was still coming. He found excuses to be near her. That is the most accurate way to describe what happened in the days that followed. Not pursuit in any conventional sense. Nothing loud or declared or obvious. A follow-up from Dr. Park that he delivered himself when he could have sent a message. A question about the men. Had she recognized either of them? Delivered in person from the passenger seat of a car that appeared outside the hospital at the end of her shift with a driver and no explanation for how it knew when she would be done. She told herself it was surveillance, protection at a calculated distance. She was not entirely wrong. On the 4th evening, she walked out of the hospital, and the car was there, and he was standing beside it, and she stopped on the steps and looked at him in the cold October air and said, "You don't have to keep doing this," he said. "I know." The car did not move. He asked if she had ever been to the River Cafe. She said she had walked past it. He said that was not the same thing. She said she knew. He held the door. The River Cafe sat on a barge beneath the Brooklyn Bridge, facing back at Manhattan across the water. The kind of restaurant where the lighting was designed to make every conversation feel like it mattered. She wore the dark blue blouse she kept in her locker for depositions. It was not dinner appropriate. He did not comment on it. He ordered wine, she ordered the salmon. And then something happened that neither of them had precisely planned. They talked. Not about Marcus. Not about the box or the men on Fifth Avenue or what his name meant in this city. About everything else. He noticed the worn paperback in her coat pocket. He asked what it was. She pulled it out. Meditations, by Marcus Aurelius. The spine had been cracked and re-softened and cracked again by years of being opened in difficult moments. My mother gave it to me when I was 18, she said. She told me I was going to need to know how to think when everything felt impossible. Some days it works better than others. He looked at the book with an expression she had not seen on his face before. Quieter than his usual control. Less managed. What did you want to be? She asked, before all of this. The question landed in a way she could see. A genuine surprise, the kind that happens when someone asks something no one has thought to ask in a very long time. An architect, he said. I studied it for 2 years. Then something more urgent came up. She waited. His eyes went somewhere else for a moment. My sister, he said. Her name was Nora. She was 23. She got involved with someone who hurt her, and I was busy building something, and I was not paying close enough attention. By the time I noticed, he said, and then he stopped. Not a pause. A full stop. The kind that means the rest of the sentence is not necessary. By the time I noticed, it was too late for me to be what she needed. He did not say the word died. He did not have to. The past tense of was said everything there was to say. Raya sat with the weight of it. A man who had built the most formidable version of a human being that she had ever encountered, carrying in his coat pocket the single moment when all that power had not been enough. That is why you stopped, she said quietly. On Fifth Avenue. Yes. She understood that in a way that did not require further translation. She told him about the box, not everything, the shape of it, the federal judge, the council members, the wire transfers, 4 years of it. He listened the way he did everything, completely still, completely present, not filling the silence with reassurance or advice until she finished. Then he said, use it. Don't be afraid of it. It is a weapon, and weapons exist to be used. Or to hurt the person holding them, she said. That, he said, and his voice shifted in a way she was beginning to recognize. That is where I come in. She looked at him across the candles and the wine and the Manhattan skyline reflected in the dark water behind him. She felt something she had not allowed herself in a very long time. She told herself not to feel it. Then his phone vibrated. He looked at it. His face did the single-degree shift to pure neutral that she now understood meant he was managing something serious behind a wall of control. I have to go, he said. He reached into his jacket, took out a card, wrote a number on the back with a pen. He set it beside her wine glass. That is my direct number, he said. Not the card. Mine. He paid and stood and was at the door when she said his name. He stopped. She looked at the card. At the number that was his personal one, not the office one, not the emergency contact one, the one that meant something different. Order the chocolate dessert, he said. It is worth staying for. He left. She sat alone at a table for 2 at the River Cafe, with Manhattan glittering across the water, and she turned the card over and she let herself feel the thing she had been carefully not feeling. Hope. Not the performed version. Not the version she wore for patients. The real one. The terrifying, enormous, embarrassing real one. She ordered the chocolate dessert. She ate every single bite. It came from the direction she had not protected. It always does. The notification arrived at 7:43 in the morning. A gossip account. A headline. She did not follow this account. 17 people had shared it to her overnight. She opened it the way you open something you already know is going to hurt. The headline said, "Mercy General Nurse's Secret Nights with Manhattan's Most Dangerous Man." Below it was a photograph, professional quality, taken from across the street, the River Cafe exit. Her face turned slightly toward him. His profile, the way he had held the door for her. She read the article. It named the hospital by the third sentence. It named her by the fifth. It called him a known, organized crime figure in the first line. It cited an anonymous source close to the situation. She read it twice. Then she called the hospital. The administrator used the voice of someone reading from a legal template. "Pending review," she said. "Leave of absence," she said. 2 weeks, possibly more, she said. Raya ended the call. She sat in the apartment that was hers, that she had paid for, that she had built from nothing. And she looked at Gerald, the coffee maker, and the plant on the windowsill she had kept alive for 4 months, and the books on the shelf, and she felt the specific devastation of watching something you constructed by hand begin to be dismantled from the outside. Then she put on her coat and went to the hospital. Because she needed to look at it directly. Because she had learned that the things you don't face directly tend to follow you. Jade was on the steps, not inside the building, outside. Standing in the cold with red eyes and folded hands and the expression of someone who has been rehearsing a terrible thing for a very long time. Raya walked past her. "Raya," Jade said. "Don't," Raya said. "Please." She stopped. She turned around. She looked at Jade's face and she understood before a single word came out of Jade's mouth. "He had something on me," Jade said. "Marcus. 2 years ago I made a medication error at work. Nobody was hurt, but it went in my file, and he found it. And he said, if I didn't give him information, he would report it to the board and end my career." She was crying now. Not controlled crying, the kind that had been building for days. He said he just wanted to know that you were okay. He said he was worried about you. "What did you tell him?" Raya said. "That you seemed different lately. That you were spending time with someone. That there was a box under your bed that you seemed anxious about." Jade's voice was coming apart. "I didn't know he would send people. I didn't know he would. Jade, I'm so sorry. You knew what he did to me." The silence that followed was complete. "You knew what he did to me," Raya said again. "Yes," Jade whispered. Raya stood on the steps of Mercy General in the cold morning light. She thought about 3 years of invisible damage. She thought about 6 months of careful rebuilding. She thought about every small thing she had collected as evidence of her own existence. The plant. Gerald. The job she was now suspended from. She thought about what it meant to be handed over by the person who brought you coffee at 3 in the morning without being asked. She said, "Go inside. Do your job. Don't resign. Just go back to work." Then she walked down the steps and she called the number. The direct one. The one from the back of the card. He answered on the first ring. "There is an article," she said, "about us. About you. Marcus had us followed." A pause. "I know," he said. She stopped walking. "You know," she said. "Yes. Since when?" "Tuesday. And you didn't tell me." "No. There were people walking around her on all sides, the city doing what cities do, moving indifferently. and she was standing completely still in the middle of it. "Why?" she said. "Because I was handling it," he said, "and because I did not want you afraid before I had something solid to give you." "Declan, I know. You do not get to decide what I am afraid of. You do not get to manage what I know about my own life. You do not get to make those decisions for me." A pause, longer than she expected from him, longer than she had ever heard from him. "You are right," he said. "Come downstairs." She looked up. She was standing outside his building. She had not noticed walking here. Her feet had carried her here without being asked, which told her something she was not entirely ready to look at yet. She went upstairs. In his office, a room with glass on two sides and a view of the park and the river at the same time, he laid it out for her completely. No management. No editing for her comfort. Everything. "Marcus Druitt has been laundering money through a real estate vehicle for 4 years, he said. "It connects to a federal judge named Holden Price and 3 city council members. What you have covers 18 months of it. My team has the other 30 months. She stared at him. "You have been investigating him," she said. "Yes. Since when?" "Since the night on 5th Avenue. That was less than 2 weeks ago." "I work quickly." She sat back in the chair. "The article," she said. "Marcus's strategy. He wants you scared. He wants you to believe the exposure damages me enough that I step back and leave you without cover." "Does it?" she said. "Hurt you?" "The article." He was very still. "It changes some logistics," he said. "That is not an answer." He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said. "It doesn't hurt me. But it hurt you, and that is not something I will be forgetting." She looked at her hands, at the city, at him. "What do we do?" she said. The word we sat between them in the silence. He did not miss it. "You mail the box tonight," he said. "Certified, tracked, addressed to the DA's office. Tomorrow morning my contact at the FBI field office receives everything my team has compiled. His name is Thorne. And Marcus," she said. "Marcus," he said, and his voice had the specific quality of something final, "is about to find out what happens when you reach into a building that was already prepared for you. Tomorrow," he said. "This ends." Marcus's text came at 11 that night. 3 messages sent one after another, the way a man sends messages when he still believes he holds the leverage. "Meet me tomorrow. 9 a.m., my office. Bring the drive. Then, or I send what I have to every hospital administrator in this city by noon. Then, you have until midnight to confirm." She photographed the messages and sent them to Declan. His response came in 40 seconds. "Don't confirm. Mail the box on the way home. Sleep. I will see you tomorrow." She went home. She sat at her kitchen table in the apartment that was hers, with Gerald and the plant and the books and the box in her coat pocket. And she thought about what it means to do something irreversible. She had been building toward this for 6 months, probably longer, probably since the moment on a shared laptop when she had found what she was not looking for and copied it and left and spent 6 months telling herself she would act when she was ready. She was ready. She put the contents of the box into a padded envelope. She addressed it to the Manhattan District Attorney's office on Center Street. She sealed it with the deliberateness of someone who is not going to unseal it. She went to the post office at 7 the next morning and stood at the counter and handed it over and watched the clerk scan it and drop it into the outgoing bin. And it was gone. The thing that had been under her bed for 6 months. The thing Marcus had sent men to a sidewalk on 5th Avenue to retrieve. The thing she had been afraid of and protective of and paralyzed by. Gone. In the system. On its way. Hers no longer. She felt lighter. Physically lighter. The way you feel when you have been carrying something in your body for so long you had forgotten it was weight. Then she went to the hospital and sat across from the administrator and said simply, "I would like my job back." The administrator opened a folder, said there had been developments that morning, said certain matters had been clarified, said the review had concluded, said yes. At 9:17, Marcus Druitt was escorted from the lobby of his Midtown law firm by 2 federal agents. He was in his Navy court suit. The Rolex was catching the lobby light the way it always caught the light. The way it had caught light at dinner parties and depositions and hospital lobbies. Because a Rolex does not know when its owner is in handcuffs, and it catches light anyway. His partners stood in the doorway. His associates stood in the hallway. The paralegal who had once told Raya she didn't know how lucky she was to have Marcus stood behind a glass partition and watched. He tried to say something. The agents were not interested in what he had to say. The handcuffs went on. Raya saw the photograph on the news at the nurse's station during a quiet moment that afternoon. She looked at it for a long time. Marcus in handcuffs, in his suit, in the lobby of the building where he had spent 4 years being a man that people believed in. She felt no need to perform anything about it. No triumph that required an audience. Just the private, complete, entirely sufficient sense of a door that had been standing open for 3 years finally closing. Judge Holden Price was placed on administrative leave by evening. 2 city council members had attorneys retained by nightfall. She found Jade in the break room near the end of the shift. Jade had a resignation letter in her hands. "I am leaving," Jade said. "I cannot stay here after what I did to you." Raya looked at the envelope. "Don't," she said. Jade looked up. "You are a good nurse," Raya said. "You made a bad choice because you were afraid. I made bad choices for 3 years because I was afraid. We don't get to resign just because we were afraid. That would mean fear wins twice." "How are you not more angry at me?" Jade said. "I am angry," Raya said. "I am genuinely, completely angry. But anger does not make me better at this job, and right now I need to be good at this job. Take that home. Come back tomorrow." She walked out of the hospital. Declan's car was at the curb. She stood on the steps for a moment in the cold air and felt the weight of the day and the weight of 6 months and the specific exhaustion of a person who has been carrying something enormous for a very long time and has finally been able to set it down. Then she walked to the car. He did not ask how she was. He already knew. 6 weeks later. The River Cafe again. A reservation this time. She had made it herself. It had required 3 attempts and a decision she had talked herself into and out of on 4 separate mornings before she finally called and said, "Yes. Table for 2. Friday at 7, the name is Raya." She arrived early. He was earlier. He was sitting at the window table looking at the Manhattan skyline across the water, and when she came through the door and he looked up, something in his face did the thing she had been aware of for 6 weeks and had been careful not to name. It went warm. Not dramatically. Not in a way that required acknowledgement. Simply warm, the way a room goes warm when the right person enters it. She sat down. The Meditations was in her coat pocket, as it always was. He noticed, as he always noticed. "May I?" he said. She handed it across the table. He opened it to the page she had folded down so many times the crease was permanent now. The page her mother had underlined. The one she had returned to in every impossible moment for 10 years. He read it quietly. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He closed the book carefully. He set it down the way you set down something you understand is not ordinary. Nora used to underline things in books, he said. She had a whole system. Colors. Symbols. I used to tease her about it. He was quiet for a moment. I have not been able to pick up a book since she died, he said. Not one. His voice was the same as it always was, even, controlled. And underneath it, finally, through a crack in the control that she had been waiting to see, the thing that lived beneath. Until this one, apparently, he said. She put her hand over his. He looked down at it. Then he turned his hand over and held hers. That was the whole moment. Quiet and enormous and completely earned. No declaration. No speech. Just his hand around hers and the city glittering across the water and the Brooklyn Bridge lit above them and the shared understanding, finally unhidden, that they had both arrived somewhere neither of them had planned for, and it was exactly right. And now I want to speak to you directly, not as the narrator, not as the voice of the story. As someone who has been thinking, the whole time I was telling you this, about what it means. Raya Callene was not extraordinary because a powerful man protected her. She was extraordinary because she kept the box, because she mailed it, because she chose to go back to work when disappearing would have been easier, because when her best friend betrayed her, she chose not to let fear win a second time, because she sat alone at a restaurant and ordered the chocolate dessert and allowed herself, just for the duration of a dessert, to feel hope. The protection that mattered, the real protection, the kind that could not be taken away, was hers. She built it herself. Over 6 months. In a studio apartment on the 12th floor with a thrift store coffee maker and a worn paperback and a box under the bed that she was afraid of and kept anyway, and sent when it was time. Declan Voss did not save Raya Callene. He stood beside her while she saved herself. And there is a particular kind of man who can do that, who can be powerful enough to make fear step back, and honest enough to know that the courage in the room was never entirely his. Marcus Aurelius wrote the thing she carried in her pocket for 10 years. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. What he meant, I think, is something like this. The box under the bed was always a weapon. The question was never whether it existed. The question was only whether she believed she was allowed to use it. She was always allowed to use it. You are always allowed to use yours. A woman nobody sees enters a danger nobody can escape. A man everyone fears becomes the only one who protects her. Through betrayal, pain, and justice, she finds love and dignity and a lesson that is worth carrying. You were never invisible. You were only surrounded by people who refused to look. And the moment someone finally looked, truly looked, it was already too late for anyone to convince you that you did not deserve to be seen. You always deserved to be seen. This was your story for tonight. If something in it reached you, if Raya's particular kind of quiet strength or the way Declan Voss crouched down on a wet sidewalk in the rain felt like something you needed today, then leave a comment and tell me which moment stayed with you. I read every single one, and I will see you next week.